Hi, welcome to Quilting with Lori. My name is Lori Dickman. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel today. Today I have another great scrappy quilt for you. This is scrappy block number 8 of my 52-week series of scrappy blocks, and we are using my Speedy Solutions Scrap Stash to create these blocks. If you have not started a scrap stash, or if you don't have it ready to go, please make sure that you check out the link in the description box below. It will take you out to my video on my Speedy Solutions to cut, sort, organize, and store your scrap stash, so you'll have everything ready to go so you can be making some beautiful scrappy quilts. I also do have, and will link my techniques book to the Speedy Solutions and the patterns book, and those are out on my website. You can read more about them out on my site. But now let's go ahead and get started and show you how these blocks are going to be made for our scrappy block today. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe to my channel. That really does help the channel so that it gets out to more quilters. And please be sure to comment. I love to hear from my viewers. So please make sure you comment. I'd love to chat with you about any questions you might have. So here is the block that we're going to be working on today. This one I call Around the Square. And we're simply using squares and rectangles for this one. These two blocks I've already made up for another project that I'm working on, but I thought it's such a fun, fast, and easy block. It's one I definitely wanted to include in my 52-week series of scrappy blocks. So let's see what we need to create this block. We simply are going to need the 4.5-inch block in the center. That's the center of each of these blocks here. And then we're going to take 5-inch squares, which, as you've seen me do in previous scrappy blocks, we're going to cut in half and trim off 1/2 inch so that we have 4 rectangles, and those 4 rectangles will end up being, well, I guess 4 out of these 2 pieces of fabric here. The rectangles will end up being 4.5 inches by 2.5 inches. And we need a total of 4 of those for the outside 4 corners of this block in the light. This is our 4.5-inch block that's in the center. Then we need 2 mediums and 2 darks, and these again are 5-inch squares that we are cutting in half, so they're each of them are 2.5 inches wide, and then we'll trim off 1/2 inch in the length, so we'll end up with rectangles that are 4.5 inches by 2.5 inches. And we have our medium rectangles out here and our dark rectangles in the center. And then we need some 2.5-inch squares. We need 4 of the light 2.5-inch squares, which we'll use in this block, as well as 4 of the medium 2.5-inch squares. And you are welcome to switch around the values. You can move your darks to the lights or the lights to the dark, whatever you want. This is your quilt top. Have fun with it. In fact, I would experiment by just having fun with all of the values and moving them around. Maybe start out with what you're seeing here and then change it around a bit. Have fun with it. But now what we're going to do is go to the sewing machine, and I'm going to show you how this is all put together. So we have 1 4.5-inch light, 2 5-inch lights, 4 2.5-inch lights, 4 2.5-inch mediums, 2 medium 5-inch squares, and 2 dark 5-inch squares. And all of these large squares are going to be cut into rectangles. So let's head upstairs to the sewing machine and we'll show you how this is put together. Okay, here we are upstairs at the machine, and the first thing that I'm going to do is to cut my 5-inch squares, 2 light, 2 dark, 2 medium. I'm going to cut them in half, so I'm going to cut them 2.5 inches wide. And then, so I've got 4 rectangles here now. They're 2.5 by 5 at the moment. I need them to be 2.5 by 4.5. So therefore I'm just going to cut 1/2 inch off the edge, and that we can put in our pet pillow stuffing bag. So those are done. And here are my darks. And here are my mediums. Okay, so I am just laying out my block right now, and I've started with the 4.5-inch square in the middle, the dark rectangles around that, the medium 2.5-inch squares around that. Then I put the medium rectangles next to the darks on the outside. Then I put in my 2.5-inch lights, and last I am going to place my rectangles, the light rectangles, around the outer side, and this makes up the block. I'm simply going to put it together in quadrants here. I'm first going to sew this two patch, and these two patches, and then I'm going to sew this together and this together. So I'll put together the quadrants, each of the little units here, as I work through the block before I actually web it. So I'll get started on that and I'll be back. Okay, so now I have these 4 corner units finished. I am going to press them. I will probably press the seam allowance to the light so that things lie nicely back here. So I'm going to press my seam allowance on these where it hits the light. And because these other two fabrics are fairly light, I don't think I'm going to have a problem with it seeing through so much on that white fabric. So I'm going to press, and then it's really important that you square up each of these units to 4.5 inches. So I'm going to press and then square up to 4.5 inches on each of these units. So here I am squaring up each of these units to 4.5 inches. There isn't really a whole lot that's coming off most of these, just a little bit, but it's important that you do square them all up. So now they are squared up, and I'll place them back in the block as they belong here. Okay, so now those units are done. Next, we are going to sew these pairs together. So there's 4 of these dark and light, or dark and medium rectangles that we're going to sew together. And I'll be right back. Okay, so these units, the rectangle units, are all sewn together. Now they need to be pressed and squared up to 4.5 inches. In the case of these, I am going to press them to the dark on each of these. So I'm going to take them over, do that, square them up, and I'll be... All right, I've just finished squaring up the rectangle units, and again, there wasn't much that had to be trimmed away, but that was important that they get squared up to 4.5 inches. And let's put them back where they belong in the block. There we go. Now the block is ready. It's basically a 9 patch of units. It's a 9 patch of 4.5 inch squares in here. And we're going to go ahead and web the block together. And as I like to do that, I like to take the second block in the first block in the second row, flip it over and start sewing, and then just keep on coming down. And I'll show you how I do that here. Okay, here is the block. Once I finished it, I went ahead and pressed it and then I squared it up to 12.5 inches. That needs to be 12.5 inches. Not much had to come off. I did make sure that the center seams were pressed out from the center square, but some of it you're going to have to kind of work with it. Some of the darks actually ended up being pressed to the lights, and that's just how it worked out. But I think it's going to be fine when I quilt it. I don't think we're going to see any dark fabrics that are going to be poking through on these lights. I think it worked out very well. So this is ready to go and add to my stash of scrappy blocks. This is block number 8. This is called Around the Block. Very fun one, very easy, all rectangles and squares, and great one to be able to use up your stash. Okay, so here I've just finished working on this scrappy block here of the Around the Block square, and I've got a couple of them here that you saw earlier that were finished for another project. But as you can see, if I had a fourth one that was ready, you could see there are secondary designs that are popping out. So this might be a really fun quilt if you need to make something quickly for Christmas. This one would be a great scrappy quilt to put together using some beautiful Christmas colors or whatever colors your family members or friends enjoy, and you'll be able to put it together very quickly. Just rectangles and squares is all that's involved, and it's fun to see all the secondary patterns that are popping out. Thank you so much for stopping by Quilting with Lori. I'm sure hope that you enjoyed the scrappy block that I presented today, as well as the other 7 scrappy blocks that I've already presented in the last 7 weeks. This is a 52-week series, so for the next 40-some weeks on Mondays, you're going to be seeing a new scrappy block that I'm putting together. At the end of this series, next summer, I will be putting together a book with all of these patterns, but I'm going to wait and do that when they're all complete. And there are PDFs attached below, so make sure that you grab that if you need that for the instructions for this particular block. Don't forget to check out the links below in the description box, which will take you not only to the video on how to get your scrap stash cut, sorted, organized, and ready to use in beautiful scrappy quilts, but also the links will take you to the books that I offer, my Speedy Solutions Techniques book and my Patterns book. And you can also develop a playlist if you like, and I will attach a copy of the playlist of all of my YouTube tutorials so that you can check all of those out. Thank you so much. Have a great week. We will see you later this week for another YouTube, as well as next Monday for block number 9 of my Scrappy Block series. Have a great week and happy quilting.